All right. Welcome everyone to Virtual Coffee Lunch and Learn Edition. At Virtual Coffee, our mission is to be a welcoming tech community that allows room for growth and mentorship at all levels and create meaningful opportunities for learning, leadership, and contribution for everyone. You can find out more about us, our code of conduct, our events at virtualcoffee.io. And one of the ways that we're trying to encourage room for growth, mentorship, leadership, contribution is with our very first virtual coffee conference, which is happening this April, the last Friday of the month. We're celebrating 5 years of virtual coffee. And this is we had a quarter challenge kickoff last week, and this is building off of that. So for the next 3 months, we're going to be working towards this conference. This month, we're really focusing on the CFP, or call for proposals. And today we're going to be talking a little bit more about that and what that looks like. So I'm going to be co-leading this today. I'm Becca. I'm one of the maintainers at Virtual Coffee, and I've been speaking actually since I think I started my very first job in tech, and 3 weeks later, I gave my first conference talk, and I was 100% not okay with that. I felt so overwhelmed and like, what am I doing here? This is wrong. But it was a really good experience. We had great conference organizers, and I think like that's a really important thing. You just want to maintain that rapport with other folks, and so I've been speaking for the last 5 years, both online, virtually, and in person. And so I've also asked my friend Josh Goldberg here today to help me co-host this. And Josh will give you his own bio, but I've met Josh in person a number of times. He's just like fantastic and wonderful. But he's spoken a lot. His talks are fantastic, but he's also a conference organizer as well. So he brings insight from both sides of that. So Josh, give a little bit more about the things that you're doing and tell us about you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh. Thanks for having and introducing me, Becca. I think Becca and I have mostly met purely by coincidence in airport lounges. And Becca was one of the people who
So wrong.
inspired me. Yeah, inspired me to get Delta, the credit card. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I'm a full-time open source maintainer, which means I do a lot of like stuff on GitHub and DevRel and coding and talking about open source. I checked back on my personal tracker. My first talk was in 2016 at a meetup. My next talk was a meetup talk in 2018, and I've been doing conference stuff since 2019. So I know a few things. But these days, in addition to the stuff I mentioned, I also am one of the organizers of SquiggleConf, which is a relatively new conference up in Boston. We're a little less than a month away from announcing our own CFP. So this is very timely to help me understand how to talk to people about CFP stuff. I'm really excited to learn what people want to know.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh, for being here. And so I think like this is a great progression, right? Like whether you want to apply to virtual coffee, and we'll talk more about that. We'll answer questions as we go on. But our goal at virtual coffee is to accept everyone. I literally just swallowed like a whole entire peppercorn. I'm so sorry. Um, our goal is to accept everyone that applies. And so we want to work with you. We want to help you refine things. So if we feel like, okay, like this is a good CFP, but let's figure out how to make this like the best that you possibly can. And that's not to overwhelm you. It's just that we know that we want to support you to do the work that you feel proud of. And I think like that's a good transition into SquiggleConf. So if you are interested, I find that like speaking for me, speaking online has been a good transition into speaking in person. They're different experiences. I find that maybe there we can talk about this too. I actually don't think this is on the agenda for today, Josh, but like I think it's valid and worth talking about that there's a different experience when you speak online versus when you speak in person. I remember was I had given a talk a number of times, at least 3 times online. And then the first time I gave it in person, I I literally thought I was gonna cry in front of everybody there. And my first instinct was like, I need to like run out of this room and just like never speak in front of anybody ever again. Um, but one of the strategies there was like I had a friend in the room, and I just like focused on that friend, and they gave me like a nod, like you're doing a good job. And I'm like, okay, I can do this, right? And so like it's okay to feel those nervous feelings even when you're applying for a conference. Um and we'll do some support building up to everything that takes you from the CFP on. But I just like want to call out that it's okay to be nervous about things, and like this is a good progression. Virtual conferences offer an opportunity that in person don't, and vice versa. And so I would encourage everyone to also apply to SquiggleConf too, because I know that Josh is creating like a really great atmosphere there. All the
Way more
hearts.
hearts than I thought would come up. Yeah, 100%.
So many of them.
God. Um, yeah, no, very, very much agreed. I think in general, whenever someone is doing something new, I find it, at least for me, a lot easier to ramp up into it instead of going straight into, the hugest thing, speaking to 1,000 people once, do like an online talk, a meetup, or like give it to your friends, or like have your coworkers or your team at work like watch a dry run of your talk. It helps the nerves and is really good, useful feedback.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding CFP evaluation. So you can kind of like, I don't have slides today, but we're going to talk about all of these things and what the progression looks like. So I know personally, I've been on a review board. It gets really hard, right? You get a lot of applications, and it can be challenging to find the ones that are right for you. Like you want everybody to be there, right? So I just want to say, from the reviewer perspective, it can be sad to say like, I'm sorry, like you just didn't make it this time. And personally, I've been on the like B list a number of times where people have come back to me and like, you didn't make the first round, but somebody dropped out, you want to come do it? Like, I think that's okay, it's valid, like I made the B round, and that's okay. You won't make the B round at virtual coffee because our goal is to get everybody in as part of that experience, but I think it's valid to know that. We're going to talk about creating your proposal, and then we're going to answer some questions at the end. So again, like for us, our goals are to support everybody. We're here to help you grow in what you're doing and to provide some like framework and support to like, how can you do this effectively? So the first part of this is understanding the call for proposal evaluation. So I know, like, from our perspective, I think that we align probably with most conference organizers. But Josh, do you want to tell us a little bit about like what your understanding is when you're reviewing applications, when you're reviewing these proposals? Like, what are the things that you're looking at in terms of like, how does this become a good fit for us?
It's a great question. Very broad area, and I'm not going to remember all the high level points I want to. But yeah, in general, the first priority is like how combination of useful and interesting is this for the attendees. Not every talk has to be useful, but at the very least, they should all be interesting, I think, ideally. So like if it's a whatever, a React conference and someone wants to talk about, how cryptocurrency will change the world, probably not very useful, perhaps only interesting to some. But like if it's a talk on React or popular frameworks or ways to use React or interpersonal skills that are useful in every framework, then that's great. Um, I'll pause there. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's so important. And one of the biggest frustrations I hear from conference organizers is it's just like the person clearly did not even look at our conference at all. And so at virtual coffee, like the conference audience, that's the community. So like if you come on Tuesday and Thursday, or if you come to a coffee table group, if you're in Slack, like you know who we are, right? And the things that we're interested in. And so, I don't know, I can't come up with an example of something that would be way off base, but I think Josh just gave a couple of really good examples of what that would look like. And so it's like understanding. And I also know that like can be a challenge because you want to get in and you want to speak. And there are some years where there can be a real dry period where you apply to lots of places, you don't get in any places. There's other times where you apply to lots of places and you get all into all of them. And then you just have to decide, like, okay, what is right for me? Can I say no to these places? And, unfortunately, that's like one of the challenges. Do you say no to those places, and how do you do it and maintain that relationship? So I think like understand the conference, know the audience, and like provide value is just the number one thing that we can say here.
For sure. Yeah. I really like the idea of learning about the conference, the community around it, the vibe, especially if it's like, for example, Seattle JS, the conference, along with Cascade JS, are heavily involved with the local meetup, Seattle JS. If there's anything local or smaller you can see or attend, that's always helpful. Also, as a reviewer, I find I can kind of tell when someone has put a lot of craft into trying to making their proposal unique. Like I see a lot of proposals that will just do the star situation task action results format for like a really common problem. Like here's how to do React forms, or here's how to write a REST API in Node.js. And they'll go through like why you want it, what you can do, maybe even mention an integration or framework. And there's like nothing personal about it. Like you could have written that with an AI extremely easily, but they're going to be 500 other proposals like that. What can you uniquely give in your proposal, or like how can you make this proposal unique and fun and different from everyone else's? Like having it stand out, much like how when you're applying to a job, it's nice to have like something cool or interesting or unique in the application that can like really, once you've gotten that like matching part nailed down, you can really push yourself over the edge there.
Yeah, so I'm gonna call on Nick Taylor, even though I did not ask him to speak. But this is a good example, Josh, because Nick spoke about forms recently, right? Nick, you had a proposal out there. So do you want to talk about like what was your process in creating a good CFP about forms, and like what was the hook there?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. One secret is I showed it to Becca to get some feedback. So, um, but essentially, I'm gonna load it up. But there was a hook which was like it was kind of clickbaity, but on purpose. Like I'm gonna find it, but it's something like forms of we've gone too far and we gotta get back to using forms. And for context about it, basically it's in relation to web development where once we did all the Ajax or fetch as they call it nowadays, not everybody, but there was a lot of basically people kind of forgetting how to actually use forms because you can still submit stuff without a form. And I also just showed some stuff that you could do with forms that people might not have known about. So I wouldn't say it was archaic what I found, but basically the person that implemented it for the W3C or for browsers was at the talk, and she said nobody's ever talked about it except me. So, which I didn't know that wasn't how I submitted that, but let me find it here. Yeah, so the title was called Back to Basics: Why HTML Forms Still Rule the Web. And then this is what Becca helped me put in here. Where is it? Uh, we've strayed too far from the simplicity and power of HTML forms. It's time to undo the damage. Like that's very like devastating kind of, but that hook worked. And then I just basically from there outlined kind of like doing a bit of go back in time about forms and then like the stuff a lot of stuff has changed on the web for the web developers out there. It's like so CSS can do a lot of things now. There's form validation built in, but you can actually enhance it. It doesn't have to be the crappy looking way it does by default. So anyways, the main thing there though was the hook. I think that Becca helped me craft because I was like hesitant. I was like, I don't know, that sounds kind of cheesy, clickbaity, but it worked. And the talk had substance to it, obviously in a demo, but I think that's kind of what pulled it in, and also context the type of conference I submitted to. This is for Netlify Compose, and it's all about web development, and so like this was very fitting for their conference as well. So getting back to what you were saying initially about, it take a look at what the conference is about. Don't just like rapid fire AI CFPs everywhere. So
Yeah, I think
that was a
like that's
long
a
answer.
super
Sorry.
no, that was great. Thank you. And I put you on the spot, so I appreciate it. Like I think that that's important. One of the things that we see, it's real easy to craft an AI response to a CFP, but I'm sure Josh can probably attest to this. Like it's pretty easy to find like, okay, that person definitely used AI for that CFP. And I'm not saying like totally don't do that. It's a good brainstorming tool. It could be a good revising tool. But like what ultimately gets you remembered by reviewers is what is the personalization there? And I think like you have to have value and you have to have relevance. And if you don't have those two things, then you're going to be forgotten. And that's what you don't want, right? Like you can get, say if the scale is 1 out of 5, you can get all threes, but that's probably not going to get you into the conference. So like what we want to do is like, you want to have value, you want to have relevance, you want to have the right format. So if they're asking you for a particular way, like this is what we're looking for. Yeah, it can be a pain to fill out that form to put it in the right format, but you do it in the right way, and then you're going to move at least like a half a point in the right direction, right? Like you're going to move forward. If somebody doesn't use the right format, then they're not going to look at it, right? And then just like the last thing, there are conferences that do support growth and mentorship. So if that's something that you're interested in, like ask. And, like Nick mentioned that he ran it by me and some other people like before he submitted. Um, I have definitely run when I did my keynote a couple of years ago, I ran that by a number of people at Virtual Coffee and like um I have an example I can share a little bit later, but like Ray Deck gave me some really good responses, and as other people in Virtual Coffee did as well. And those helped me to craft that. Like, okay, so what are people interested in and what are people looking for? And I know like there can be that like, I'm so nervous, like I don't want people to judge me. It's okay. There's when I taught college English, one of the essays that I taught was Anne Lamott's Shitty First Drafts. And I just like always thought that that was good. Um, and the reason why it's like the purpose is like you're not ever going to write something perfect the first time, right? Like there's going to be a revision process. There's going to be changes, and like it's okay to share with people things that are not perfect. And so I like really wish that we would get in the habit of like let's share things that aren't perfect. Let's get feedback because personal conversations are what move us forward. And that's okay. Like it's okay to share something that you feel is really crappy because someone else might be like, oh wow, I really like that. Or wow, there's this like one piece that I never have thought of that thing before. So, like do share, put in the monthly challenge channel here, ask other people. But there are for sure like things that might be CFP common pitfalls. And we've talked a little bit about that now. But Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about like some of the things that you've seen or that you've experienced that can help the audience understand how to be more effective?
Yeah, I'll start with the transition from what Nick said. There's a difference between engaging title and clickbait title, and difference is subtle. Clickbait titles, I feel like, are ones that intentionally mislead or misrepresent, whereas engaging titles are ones that um, express the joy or express the positivity or the good parts of the talk. Like Nick, I really like your title, while HTML forms still with a reb. It's engaging and like, ooh, it's cool. What do you mean ruling? Like it makes you think of rulers or kings or war chiefs or something. But it actually is technically accurate. Like a HTML form is the correct way of doing a form, whether it's through HTML or framework on top of it or whatever. So like, I don't know, trying to understand the difference between good clickbait and bad clickbait, or good engagement versus bad, uh, it strong +1. Yeah.
And we'll share, Josh has shared some CFPs that he's written with me and that I think are like very fantastic examples of what we should be looking for that we'll look at just a little bit later on. So I think like that's super important. The other thing is, sometimes you're not really sure what you want to talk about. And that's okay, but like for the conference reviewer, they need to have a general sense of what you're talking about enough that they can say like this fits with our audience. This fits with the track that we're working on. And so like providing sufficient detail, not just like I don't know, I'm going to say something about forms. Like okay, like I know at Virtual Coffee, we know everyone here, but like good practice is to think it through. Our CFP is not due until the end of this month. So you have plenty of time to construct something, to ask questions about things like, and we want to help you create something that you're really proud of. So I would say like really make time to create something that you're proud of.
Yeah. Within that making time, not everyone will appreciate the same set of strategies, but one of my favorite ones is trying to work backwards from outcomes to the title. What am I trying in this talk to convey to people? If it were Nick's talk, let's, for example, pardon me, Nick, if I mess this up, I'm trying to convey like the right way to do forms, why they're the right way, some of the wrong ways, some of the pitfalls, how to do it well, best practices. Okay, so from that set of goals of how to do HTML forms, right, with these things, what is the general theme, or like what are the pieces of information I'm going to have to convey? What's the graph of like this needs to be supported by that needs to be, and then from there, like what's the overall theme and how can I describe that in a title? I find that to be really useful, kind of like how teachers such as Becca have like formed lesson plans to do the same thing for a conference talk.
Yeah, and I like honestly find titles are the worst part for me. I hate writing a title. So if I can wait until the end, like try and find, okay, like I finally got like my hook. I know what I'm talking about. Like, how can I make something that's interesting to everyone here? And like you have to think when you're at a conference, your title is what engages people to come. Um, it depends on your conference, but like a lot of times they'll have like the event in the session list and it doesn't give the description of your talk. So the only way that they know what your talk is about is by that title. So, there's often like maybe you can go to the website and look or whatever. And that's great. But like if you want someone, like find that way to hook them in. And I think like Josh gave a really good explanation of like clickbaity versus like here's a hook and let's make sure that we capture your interest. And so, this kind of like goes into this idea of like these core components. So you want to craft a title that is engaging for your audience. That's the first thing that your reviewers are going to look at. And the second thing is probably the description. So you want to make sure that you're grabbing their attention, that they understand what you're talking about, um, and that they can see like how does this provide value. And I reviewed CFPs for Codeland years ago. And one of the things that always stood out to me was there was something in like the CFP guide that said, should this be a blog post, right? Or why is this not a blog post or something to that effect? And the idea is like, yeah, like if you're presenting in front of an audience of people, like what differentiates this from another form of content that we already see? So I think like that's a really good way to frame it as well. Josh, what do you think about like crafting that description? What makes it engaging and purposeful?
I really like it's similar energy to why was this meeting not an email? Why was this talk not a blog post? Yeah. I like that a lot. For me, it's not quite star situation task action result, but I like to say like the very high level hook, some of the like high level points, and then the actionable takeaways that people get from it. Um, I I don't know. I have found that my descriptions tend to be very bland until the very end. Like I will just have that rote, like this is what's covered in it. And then towards the end, once I figure out the title or alongside the title, I'll try to figure out like some fun phrasing-y way to do it. But when I'm reviewing descriptions, very much like I need to know what is the context, what are the high level points you're going to teach us, and then when I leave your talk, what am I going to be thinking about doing next?
Yeah, and I think like that approach, do you want it to be educational? Do you want it to be inspirational? So like also thinking about your own motive for giving this talk. Like what do you want the audience to be able to do next? And I think that it becomes a challenge. And Josh, you might have some ideas about this, but like actually teaching someone a skill in a really short period of time that they remember and they can implement can be really hard. And so I know like my favorite talks personally are the ones that are like, here's this thing, it's really cool. Let me inspire you, and then you can go investigate it on your own. And so they like give me enough information that I can move forward. But I'm not sitting there like, oh my gosh, like I missed that step. Like, and that's like for me, maybe that's a difference between a workshop and a talk. Like if I want a step by step, I'm gonna go to a workshop. Um, if I want to be inspired, like, okay, I saw this person work through this problem and it seems doable, like something that I can tackle. then I'm going to try that thing. So that's what I like that I like the educational, I like the inspirational, let's move forward. Because I don't, as an audience member, I don't get scared by like, I missed the thing. But Josh, like, what are your favorite kind of talks at a conference?
Ooh, I don't know. It fluctuates. I think I like seeing stuff that, as you said, is not a blog post. Um, I I personally, yeah, I like the ones that inspire me. Um, I really like non. I don't know. Have we figured out a better term than non-technical, one less convoluted to say than interpersonal as a
I like
community?
core skills, like that's generally it. I mean, it just depends on what you're using, but I feel like core skills are human skills, and that's what we use otherwise. So I don't know.
Great, that. Yeah, I like those. I like, I don't know. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make as speakers is, as you said or described, giving a workshop. If I'm not going to easily remember, if I have to, if I'm taking notes on something in a slide and it's roughly a copy and paste of the docs, like if you're telling me intricacies of the API, I'm not going to remember that. It doesn't serve the talk. It's probably boring. I get it out of there. That shouldn't be in the talk, and it certainly shouldn't be in the description. So yeah, I like vibes, I like ideologies, I like learning a new way of thinking about something, or at the very least learning a new way or set of ways of doing something, like a new way to architect an app, or a new why some new library is cool and different from everything that came before.
Yeah, I love that. Different ways of understanding different people too, to really help. Like, okay, what is the well-rounded viewpoint? Like, also, like, why is this useful? So, like, if you're teaching something new, or if this is a new ideology or approach, like, letting us know, okay, cool, but like, why should we be interested in that thing? And I think that's, I kind of like go back to teaching writing and this idea of like convincing your audience, like how are you going to do it? What are you doing? Why is it important? Like capturing those, like they call them reporter questions, I guess, can be a good way to get started. I'm not recommending like put that into your proposal, but think about that. Like writing a proposal is like a brainstorming process. So I think that's important. We talked, I think, a little bit about like defining clear learning objectives too. And you'll see this in different CFPs where they want to know some CFPs are like really intense, right? Where they ask you to like spend a half an hour on each proposal. What's your short description? What's your long description? What are your learning objectives? What are your all of these different things? Um, that's valid because probably those conferences are getting quite a bit of um, applicants for that. But like learning objectives, I think helps you to like kind of frame that as well. So thinking about like, what are you going to teach? Why is this important? We kind of covered that, but Josh, do you have any extra tips?
I had it and then I forgot it. Dang. Oh yeah, don't trash talk. Um,
Oh, it's a good one.
it's not just as simple as don't insult people. I mean, a lot of people will put it in a CFP that says like this library is bad, or this is an old bad way of doing things. A, that's kind of hurtful. B, oftentimes that's incorrect. C, and perhaps most importantly here, it's almost never the case that something is objectively bad, even if it's not the right way of doing stuff. Like I want to see in talks nuance. I want to know that the person giving the talk has understood things fully enough to understand why we did stuff the old way. Like to take an example, Redux, which is this very popular state management library for React, for years and years was like there's a very direct recommended way of doing it, which was a lot of work, but like very explicit and better than what was before. Now there's this Redux toolkit, which like does a lot of that for you. I've seen a lot of talk submissions about how old Redux sucks and Redux toolkit is fantastic, and you should only ever use toolkit. But although I personally find that to be true for myself, that's not correct. That's not a pleasant way of describing things. It's not accurate. And it's not the vibe that I would really want in like a fun, welcoming conference. So don't just like not actually trash talk. Don't intellectually trash talk too.
Trash talking, two thumbs down. Um, so, the other thing is they'll probably ask you for audience specification. And this is one of the things we kind of like talked about earlier. So understand the conference, right? Like if this is a conference that normally expects high level concepts, then submitting something for beginner level is probably not going to work, right? Like here for our conference, we're anticipating all levels and we're just going to kind of work with it and group it and just like be real transparent about how we organize the conference. But it's very useful to understand like what is the audience you're talking to? And maybe it's not beginner, maybe it is broad. And I'll just like, I have like one caveat as a speaker. So one time I gave a talk and I said, this is a beginner. I was like very clear. This is a beginner level talk. And when I asked my audience, I had a pretty packed room and I was like, how many of you are beginners? There's very few people. Like, how many of you like have been doing this for years or something like that? And it was like most of the people. It's like, oh, I'm like now immediately overwhelmed as a presenter because like I don't feel qualified to give this talk because I prepared it for a bunch of beginners. But I think like as long as you're honest with your um with in your CFP and also when you're giving the talk, like this is who it's geared for. So also like feel free to leave if you want to. That's totally okay. I think it's fine and valid. We do, I think, have a talk from a couple years ago from Gant Laborde about giving a talk. And he talked about like, hey, sometimes people like leave in the middle of your talks. Like, I feel that's hard for me when people just like get up and walk away. I get really distracted by it. But like he gave some really good tips about it and like a perspective of thinking about it, like I don't know, maybe they have to go to the bathroom or something. But I think like as long as you're honest up front, like this is what the talk is about, this is what your expectations can be, then you have set your audience up for success. So you're setting yourself up, you're setting them up as well. So um, I think that's important. And then engagement. So, there's different ways to engage your audience. And like every speaker has a different voice. And I think that it's probably good to maintain your voice from your CFP to your talk. So you might want to do some introspection as well. Like, what is it like for me as a speaker? Like, who do I want to convey? Like, who is my speaker persona? Because my speaker persona is a little bit different than like me in real life. Because I got real nervous if I don't have my speaker persona on, right? I think like, Beyonce performs on stage and she's got her Sasha Fierce or whatever that is. So like find that for you. What does that mean? Brian says in the chat, I explicitly tell my audience up front that they can leave if the talk isn't working for them. First conference I ever went to, I was like so in over my head in a talk, and I was like so nervous and so embarrassed, and like I just like left all of my stuff in the room. I was like, maybe they'll think I just had to step out for a minute and I'll just like come back later and then they won't be mad at me. No one's gonna be mad at you for leaving. It's okay. Meg put in the chat the talk from Gant, Conquering Your Stage One Laugh at a Time. Gant is a fantastic presenter. I've heard him a couple of times. But I think like, like what does that persona look like for you? And I don't know, Josh, do you have any tips about that?
Practice, practice, practice. It is a persona. No matter how natural you think you are on stage, it is a different form of speaking than when you're with a single person or with a group of people. You need to practice. All the like lovely, effortless speakers like the Steve Jobs who just seem to do it naturally. They do it seemingly naturally because they practiced a bajillion times to different various groups of people, to speaker coaches, even if you can, to like people who've given them feedback that they've actively worked on. You got to keep practicing. No one can ad lib a talk without a lot of practice doing that.
Yeah, and like that's all the support. Like we will provide that support at Virtual Coffee. So if that's something you're worried about, like submit your CFP. We'll work with you. We'll work with you from now until the end of April. So there's plenty of time. And like I guarantee that we can get everyone here to the point that they feel comfortable enough to present. So I think that's important. So we have about 20 minutes left, and I would really like to I'm just going to run through the different formats that we have, but then I do want to talk about some like positive examples that Josh has submitted so we can kind of break them down. So we have lightning talks. Those are about 7 minutes. We've done lightning talks maybe every year since virtual coffee has existed. So it's a pretty familiar concept to most people who have been around. If you haven't been around, that's totally fine, but it's generally focusing on a single clear message. You just want to know like what is the impact of this thing. We have 30-minute talks, which go a little bit more in depth. So rather than like generally covering a topic, it's more, okay, what is this focus point of view? How can we talk about this thing? Can we dig a little bit deeper? Is there something that you want to talk about? We also have panel discussions. And so for us, like we all know each other or we know a lot of people at virtual coffee. If you haven't been to Tuesdays and Thursdays in a while, like you can always join and meet new people or join the co-working room. And the idea is like, can you provide multiple perspectives? So, if you love talking about accessibility and there's a couple other people in the community, then a great thing to do might be to reach out to them and say like, hey, do you want to do a panel presentation together? Like, can we talk about this? Can we answer questions? And like, sometimes a panel presentation is really great if you know that folks are interested in a topic. So the last conference I was at Web Unleashed in Canada in, I don't know, like November or something. And I was on a panel there and we were talking about like, hey, what is like the future of the web? Do you even need a website? Is that important? And that's something like as a community builder that I have opinions about, right? And so I wanted to talk about that thing. So it wasn't particularly technical, but I got to be on stage with some like very technical people and like think about other perspectives and like things that you should consider. Um, and then we also have like the option for interactive discussion. So think about this as like Tuesday and Thursday virtual coffee, you're the room leader. So you don't have to have ever been a room leader at virtual coffee, but like if you're like, hey, I would really love it if we covered this topic, you can be the one that provides that topic. And then you just open it up to the room and like we'll support you. We'll make sure that you have the tools that you need to be able to facilitate that conversation, to ask questions and to move forward. So that's kind of like what we're looking at in terms of different formats. You can find those all on our quarter challenge page on the site. I'll drop that here in the chat in a little bit. But I do want to talk about Josh's CFPs that he shared with me. Let me pull them up. Please stand by. Okay. Do you want me to share the screen or no, Josh?
Sure. These are all public.
Okay. Let me figure out how to. I think we're sharing right. Can you see this? How to complain positively. Do people see that? Okay, Josh, why don't you talk us through this? I just love this proposal. It's so personal. I feel like I know there's a person behind this and it's not just a machine, right? This is like so great for me.
Thanks. I gave this talk at a different conference from the same organizers. It was Staff Plus Berlin instead of Lead Dev London. And I ended up not being available for this specific one, but I liked this writing of the proposal the most. Yeah, this is a, whatever we're calling it, interpersonal core skills, human talk, where what I really love about this was that it is something that I'm by nature terrible at. I'm really bad at complaining in productive ways. I just complained. It's not great. But it's such a useful skill. So like this to me is like a big culmination of part of my career journey of learning like it's good that you can identify bad things. It's bad if you just, poop all over the place about them in ways that are hurtful to other people. So yeah, I had a lot of passion in this little talk.
Yeah, I think like that's a good thing to point out. I gave a talk a couple of years ago, and it was called How to Apologize. And I would say like it's not a skill that I'm particularly great at, right? Like maybe some people are good at it, but like it's hard work to do it right, right? Like my kids yesterday, one of my kids yesterday did something that was not nice to another kid. I was like, you need to apologize. Like, fine, I'm sorry, right? Like that's not a real apology, right? But I feel like we get that all the time, and that doesn't build bridges. And so the goal of an apology is to build bridges and to understand what other people are going through. Um, and so in a lot of ways it was like kind of similar in that vein. And so one of the things I think that we can do when we give talks or we create CFPs is like, okay, what is a skill that we want to improve upon, that we can even talk about our own shortcomings, because people like to know like, okay, I'm not the only one that's really bad at complaining, right? Like, okay, somebody else out there is complaining, but they're working on it. And like, I want to work on it with them. Or somebody else is a terrible apologizer. And like, I want to build on that skill. So I would say, like, if you have a weakness, that's a really good talk, because there's a human aspect to like, we're in this together and we're going to do a good job at improving ourselves together.
Yeah, I have a lot of weaknesses, so I've given a lot of talks. Also, one of the talks I've been wanting to give is about how I'm too self-deprecating.
That's amazing. All right, I'm gonna pull up the second one, which is a little bit different of a style. I lost my screen. Let me try and find it. Okay, I think this is it. Okay, we see this TypeScript static analysis hidden gems. So this is like maybe on the opposite side of the track. I don't want to say opposite, like they're all super valuable. But this is like if we're talking core skills versus technical skills, I would say this falls in that technical skills track. And like it's also like I'm gonna just venture back a bit and say when you need to research the conference you're applying to, is that important to them? Do they only have technical tracks, or do they offer some track for core skills? And I've had conference organizers reach out to me and say, like, look, we've got 5 technical tracks and 1 core skills track. So like it's super competitive what's going to get in there. But just like recognizing, do they even have that is, save yourself some time. But go ahead and like walk us through this, because I think like again, like this is a great idea of what it means to create something that feels worthwhile to listen to.
Thanks. Yeah. Um, Trying to play the game of predicting what slots are like more or less crowded at a conference, impossible game. Just submit. Yeah, I'm always surprised when anyone accepts one of my talks that has like the phrase static analysis in the title, because that is not a popular phrase in software development. People who don't know what it is tend to, in my experience, tend to be often somewhat intimidated by it. It's too kind of complex sounding words. And people who do know what it is, things like linters, not a lot of people have a very positive opinion on the linter. So like as someone who works on that stuff day to day, I find it's a very worthwhile challenge to try to make it seem exciting or interesting to use these things that you might have a visceral negative reaction to. So that's why I'm using phrases like hidden gems, like powerful code analyses and automations. It can do so much more for you. Like really trying to show this is really useful and you might not know it. Like trying to emphasize the usefulness and fun of it. That was what I tried to make shine through in this kind of submission. I'll also say too, if I can continue on this one,
Yep.
I love putting lists in my descriptions. I don't do it always, but it is like a thing that I do. When the talk is like an overview of a bunch of different things, I tend to like just having a list item for each of them. For example, this one, I wanted to show all these cool things you could do in your dev tooling that you might not know about. Cool things you can do that are useful you might not know about is a great general template for talks. So for each of those things, like what it is, what it does, and why it's useful. For like TS prune, detects unused code, and it's cool because it uses the type system. Something like that I find to be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I think like that's a good breakdown, what it does, why it's useful, and giving some additional information there. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I just want to maybe take this last 10 minutes to see if there are any questions. So I'm just going to pause for a second. All right, it looks like we have no questions. So Josh, I'm going to see, are there any things that you think are important or like tidbits or words of wisdom that you've come across either as a presenter or a conference organizer that would be helpful?
Yeah, you actually did mention a lot of this earlier, like asking for help. A lot of conferences, I would say it's a sign of a good conference, though not necessarily always there. If they offer help, some just don't have the time or budget or bandwidth. But trying to get help is important. Um, I have like a few friends who I will sometimes bounce new ideas off of. Um, I think it is very much like a numbers game, again, similar to jobs. Like I did not get the vast majority of my early submissions accepted. Once you have a reputation, that reputation can work for you. Like there's a big difference between 0 talks given and 1 talk. And then there's another somewhat lesser difference between 1 and 2. So like boosting that online presence, I don't mean like constantly posting on Twitter or X or Blue Sky, but like having a website, like having some way of showing that like you are a real human can like really help fill out what your personality is and what you like to do, which can help the talk. Yeah, that's kind of top of mind for me. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And it's always, I don't, whether I'm interviewing for a job or I'm finding a new doctor or applying to a conference, right? Like I'm always like Googling the people because I want more context about those things, right? And so I think that's like really helpful. And even, like some of the conference organizers have said, like, hey, if you have questions, reach out. Like, I'll reach out. Or I don't know, like, there's a couple of people in my network that, like, all right, I'm really, struggling to refine this idea or whatever. I'm going to ask those people. And so I think, like, a big part of it for a lot of people is how do you get past that point of nervousness to just say, all right, I can do this. Um, I'm going to do it. I just need a little bit of help. Like, so who do I turn to for that help? And, you know, I I don't I can't even tell you how many people that we've had at virtual coffee who have given a lightning talk, who have given a lunch and learn, or done some other form of leading the community that have said, like, I never thought that I would be able to do this before. Like as an organizer, like that makes my heart really happy. I'm like glad, like we want to get you to that point. So if you're feeling
Yeah.
nervous, like reach out.
That nervousness is an advantage later on. I know that as someone who used to be really nervous, it's not pleasant to hear. It's good that you're nervous, but like there are benefits of it. Like I feel like I have a lot more empathy with people who went through the same trials and tribulations that I did. And like I feel for you. If you say you're nervous, I will do my best to help you with that. I'll say too that like whatever avenues for support you have are very good, and as we said very early, leaning into or easing into things is great. Giving a lightning talk at a local meetup or like an
Yeah.
online thing like BC, fantastic. I'm one of the organizers of the Boston TypeScript meetup, Boston TS Club, and we explicitly have 1 or 2 lightning talks each meeting or meetup
Mm.
that most of the time aren't even technical. Like I my spouse is going to be giving one at our next meetup talking about why you should adopt cats and save cats from the streets and all the benefits of having cats. Like if you don't want to give a talk on something programming-y, an even smaller first step could just be to find something you're passionate about or excited about or just some cool thing and give a 5-minute talk on it.
Yeah, I love that. I know that like when Meg gave a lightning talk about um knitting. Was it
Yeah,
knitting or
it was
crocheting? I am sorry. I'm
it
so
was
bad.
a
I don't know
lunch
the
and
difference.
learn about knitting and crocheting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's a really good way. Like talk about the thing that you're interested in. and we can, and Abby Perini has a really good series about, I'm so bad. I don't know the difference between knitting and crocheting, but she's got a series of blog posts that connect that to code.
Well,
One of
someone
those,
wasn't paying attention.
Meg, I'm just like, I have ADHD, so like my brain is just like, I'm not doing this, so like this is cool. I'll remember the general idea of things, but like,
Sure.
sorry, I do know that Abby wrote a really cool. I can find it for you if you're interested. Um, so yeah, like finding that things, and I know like for me, I've talked a lot about like I've gone through medical trauma. I've navigated the medical system. I've done research into like what makes it effective to communicate as a doctor, and like how can we transfer that to tech. So like a lot of that is my personal story that's intermixed with like how can we improve the situations that we are in now. So you also might like look at like where are those transferable skills, and we've had some real good talks and lunch and learns about transferable skills, so check those out on our YouTube channel. But I just want to thank Josh for being here and for sharing. I really appreciate it. Any last thoughts?
Um, Thanks for having me. This is always fun. I enjoy chatting with you and stuff, folks in general. Um, I don't know. No one thinks that they can be like a conference speaker, or very few people think they can be a conference speaker until they start doing it. I say just go for it. There are more avenues to do it than you think. Virtual coffee is a fantastic one. Um, just do it, and if you need help, don't be afraid to ask. We all need that.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh. I think like I gave my first talk when I was like 3 weeks into my first job, and I was like, this does not make any sense. I was very, very nervous. That was an hour-long talk. Um, and that seemed a lot. But I made it through. And then the pandemic happened. So that was fun. But I dropped in the chat our CFP form. So be thinking about that. We would love to see you all submit a talk or a panel or, whatever you're thinking of. And also last year when we did lightning talks, I created a lightning talk guide. So you can go ahead and look through that, ask questions. And again, like make it your own. Like this is you, right? Like be a reflection of yourself. You have something to share that's valuable to everybody else who's here. And so I don't want you to think like I need to sanitize who I am to give this talk. And virtual coffee, I think, is a good way to do that because like we're here to support you where you are. So bring your full self. Um, and I think that's it. So again, thanks, Josh. Um, SquiggleConf, I hear, is very awesome. I would love to make it one day. So check out Josh's conference, and we'll continue supporting everyone weekly in our async, or no, it's our synchronous check-ins. Arvind is doing those on Fridays, so definitely check those out. And we will see you all next time. So thanks everyone for being here.